everyone, welcome back to the shop. It's been a little while. I've been busy, it's been cold, I haven't been out here as much as I wanted to be. But I am back, and with a pretty interesting project too. I think it'll be either really good or not work at all. I've been commissioned to make a modular sort of bookshelf that can be knocked down into pieces that are no more than 4 feet long. The idea being that it can fit easily in the back of a car for easy transport. The bugbear of the whole thing is the client has requested that the bookshelf be 6.5 feet tall. So, that leads me to some interesting conundrums, which I think are going to be fun to address. Basically, my plan is to have 2 ladders that make up either side of the bookshelf. Obviously, they'll be nice, but essentially ladders that are each about 3 feet tall. They're going to be joined together with dowels at the mating ends, where they will then form the 6'6" side to the bookshelves. And then across the rungs of those ladders will be the shelves. And the shelves I will route a groove into the bottom of that will perfectly mate, hopefully, with those rungs, hopefully locking everything together. So to start, I'm going to square up all the leg blanks using the planer. I did run into some issues, most notably on this board, where a small split that I didn't notice initially in the edge turned into actually a pretty big cavity here. I have plenty of spare shelf stock, so I'm not super concerned about it, and I can rip this up and use it for other stuff. It did spook me a little bit on the joiner when it just suddenly kind of exploded on me. Do a better job than I did of inspecting for cracks and figuring out how those might interact when you try to have spinning blades of death go through them at high speed. And once all the planing is done, now it's time to rip the shelf pieces to their final width. So, joined up together, these 10 boards will make up 5 shelves that are about 10 inches wide. These guys will make up each of the quarters of the ladder that have to be made. So now the only stock I have left to mill is the slats that are going to make up the rungs of the ladders, which I should be able to do out of some of the pieces I already cut up. Now that I've got each of these rungs cut, I need to cut the tenons at the end of them. That'll then go into a mortise that matches on the legs of the ladders. This is a machined piece of brass that's exactly 1/4 of an inch thick. As you can see, I lined it up with the table saw, and it is a pretty good match. So after some further contemplation, I've decided that doing this for the rest of my life to make 32 of these tenons is not going to be a fun time. So what I am going to do is cut the shoulder, which is to say the part where it reaches the main block of wood, on here just to establish that nice straight line. And then I will go over to the router table and use that to hog out the rest of the material with a 3/4 inch bit, which should be much faster. I haven't used a router table to carve tenons like this before, so it'll be a bit of a new thing, but I think it's worth giving a shot. And an hour later, we have 18. I only needed 16, but I made a couple spares of these guys. Definitely made some questionable decisions on the router. I ended up using a combination of the 3/4 inch bit and this stop piece in a couple different places just to do everything here. I'm not super comfortable on the router table yet, so I wanted to experiment with it, but don't worry, I was keeping my hands well clear. I had my sleeves rolled up, so nothing was getting out, and obviously I don't have any cords dangling off my sweatshirt when I'm doing stuff like this. I find routers really intimidating, and so I'm trying to maintain a healthy respect for them, but also get a better handle on them. But as you can see, I've got all my rungs there. So I think once it warms up a little bit, which hopefully it will tomorrow, I will start gluing up the shelf pieces, and maybe while that's drying, I will work on the joinery for all these guys. One of the joys of having such a small shop is when I need to try and glue a lot of things, it all goes pretty quickly badly. That's just some spare wood. Alright, now I want to square up the ends of each of my leg blanks so I can start measuring and marking for the mortises, the holes where those tenons that I cut earlier are going to go. These are not all exactly the same length, so it makes it a little bit tricky, but it shouldn't be that bad. Normally I would use my chop saw for this, but it is currently where all of the offcuts of ash are sitting. So I'm just going to cross cut on the table saw, should be fine. Alright, unfortunate news. It seems at some point during my milling process I forgot how math works. And these two leg blanks I had cut, now I cut one spare, so I had 9 for the 8 that I needed. But these two are just shy of the 36 inches that they need to be. They both come in at around 34.5. And it needs to be 36 inches, that's a specific requirement of the design. So what I'm going to do is, this one's going to be spare anyway, and I'm going to use it for some feet for the thing. So I'm going to cut off a chunk of it that I will then use as the end of this when I join them together. It's a little awkward, but I think it'll work out okay. Alright, so now I need to figure out how to join together these two pieces in such a way that they will form a solid whole. What I am leaning towards doing is just slapping a dowel in there and calling it a day, pretty much. Just gotta carefully drill some holes, slap a dowel in there, glue it together, and we should be good to go. Well, that was one of the more dodgy clamp ups that I've ever had to do. My longest bar clamps were just barely big enough to cover the 3 feet. And then just to help keep the twist from getting out of control, did these extra clamps here. I don't think it'll be 100% perfect, but it'll be close enough to where nobody's going to be able to tell that doesn't already know. Now that that's finally done, I can get back to the actual task at hand, which is marking and drilling the mortises for these. Now it's just a matter of figuring out how the mortises work. Now, a mortise, for those of you who don't know, the type of joint I'm doing here is called a mortise and tenon. This part's called a tenon. It's what's going to insert into a slotted hole called a mortise, and together that forms a really strong bond just with glue, because you have a lot of surface area to work with. It's one of the oldest kind of consistently used joints throughout history because it works really well. Finally got it figured out. So I have my center mark. I was able to calculate the distance I needed to go in from the sides in order to get the correct lines here. Do that, and then in order to translate from my center mark to the actual thing, I made a mark on the end of the tenon, which I can just line up with my center mark here, and then mark appropriately. So that will now be the exact tenon that I need to cut. Now, I think originally I was going to do this on the router table, but these are so small, and I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch bit for this, it might be easier just to do it on the drill press and clean it up by hand. I might have to experiment with it. But before I can do that, I now need to mark out another 8 of these. Or 7, I guess. So I'm going to do that, and I will be with you in what will be no time on your end, and probably like an hour on mine. Fun. Okay, went ahead and got everything marked up, so you can see I've kind of colored in. Doesn't show up super well on the darker pieces. What needs to be hugged out for the mortises. I'm thinking these pieces are just unwieldy enough that the drill press might be a safer bet. These mortises don't have to be super duper clean, so I think I'm going to test cut a couple on the drill press, see where that gets me. So let me do that, and I'll get back with you once I have an idea. Okay, so I went ahead and used the drill press. The Forstner bit, I essentially did 3 holes, 1 on each end, and then 1 to kind of clean up whatever's in the middle. Took about 2 seconds with the chisel to clean out the inside. The actually more difficult part was rounding over the edges of the tenon here. I just did this with a chisel. I think I will move to using the router for this, at least for the bulk of it, just to make it my life a little easier. But that is pretty much bang on. So now I just have to do that 15 more times. Fun! To help speed this along a little bit, I threw together just a quick sort of sacrificial table / fence for the drill press. This will just help me line everything up just right, so I can drill lots of holes. So, I'd like to just disappear and do this quickly, so I'm going to film the first couple, and then I will jump cut to when I'm done. And after about an hour, like I said, all of the mortises are cut. Still need to clean up a few of them with the chisel, but the vast majority of that is done. Next up, I'm going to plane all of the shelves, and then once that's done, I will start rounding over all the tenons that I cut, and we'll be able to start really putting this together. I set up a quick and dirty stop block on the router table just to help me round over the edges of these tenons. I'm going to have to finish up that last little bit by hand, but it's better than doing the whole thing. So let's get that done. Now that I've got the whole pile of tenons cut, mortises cut, It's just a matter of cleaning up the holes, cleaning up the shoulders of these. You can see from where the router left just a little bit of square edge at the bottom there. The better way to do something like this would be to use something like a panta router, which would then let you do a straight cut kind of in an elliptical shape. I don't have one, so this is what we're going to do. So the chisels to the rescue. This is going to take a while, so I'm just going to do it. I don't want to force it all the way home because I'll never get it out again, but that is pretty good. Yep, so time to go and do this 32 more times. But I will not subject you to the torture of watching me do it. I'm not fully gluing anything together because I want to make sure I'll be able to get back apart. So I think I'm going to do just a couple more touch-ups, and then I think I'm going to start gluing them up. Now the good news is obviously these don't need a lot of glue, so I'm just going to put in a little bit just to give them some staying power. And I'm hopeful that I'll be able to get everything together without any problems. Let's try to put this together with a little bit of glue. Like I said, I'm really not going overboard with the amount of glue. I think just a little bit on the faces and shoulder will be more than plenty. I went ahead and did the middle two off camera to get my act together, and I think by this time around it's a lot easier. I made a little more effort to clean up the tenons, so they slide in a little easier now. I don't have to wail on them with a mallet, which is how it should be anyway. I also, on most of them, I slightly chamfered the edges of the tenon, which just helps it fit into the slot a little bit better. They are still pretty tight friction fits though, which is what you want. Now for the shelves, the first thing I have to do is square them up, so I'll do that quickly, and then cut them all to length. Should only take a few seconds. I am pleased to sponge with that. Still racks just a little tiny bit, but for something with no glue in any of the joints, I really can't complain. Obviously, this is just the bottom half, so I gotta finish up the rest of the shelves, figure out how I'm gonna join the legs together, and then I'm gonna make a couple feet just to make it a little bit taller overall. But that is, I think, a beautiful proof of concept. So now I have to figure out how I'm going to join these up with the main legs, and also how I'm going to join the leg segments together. Originally I was going to use sections of that 1-inch dowel that you saw me use on that repair before, but I just found it so difficult with the bits I have and the tools at my disposal to get a 1-inch wide hole neatly centered in the end grain here. So what instead I'm going to do are use some of these stainless steel pins. Now I know I'm cheating and using metal fasteners, but technically these are just pins. So these, as with so much of my hardware, salvaged out of an old piano. And I think I'm just going to do 2 each, measured from the center, on everything. And I think getting a hole that's 1/8 of an inch or whatever these are is going to be a lot easier than drilling one big one. And I think it'll make it easier to align things too. Now, luckily for my sanity, this was commissioned as an unfinished piece, so I don't have to go deal with painting or staining any of it. I am going to give it a once-over with some sanding, make sure all the burn marks are gone, all that fun stuff. But that essentially wraps up this project. And here it is, fully assembled. I won't lie, the assembly's a little bit awkward. I think with 2 people it would be very easy, but with 1 it's a little janky, so I didn't film it because I was too busy putting it together. That all said, once it's in place it'll be rock solid, and I'm really excited to see what finish they put on it. I'm sure it'll look really nice. I think it looks pretty nice just bare wood, but obviously can't hurt to dress it up a little bit. I hope you all really liked this video. This was the first good weather we've had all year, so I wanted to take advantage and get this built. So if you did like the video and you've stuck with me this far, please like and subscribe. It helps me immensely. I know a lot of you are pretty new subscribers, and for that I thank you. I promise content will come out a bit more frequently than it has. The weather's just been really bad, and it's hard for me to be out in the shop when it's 25 degrees out. That's going to do it for this one, so I will see you hopefully sooner than a month and a half, and we will make some more stuff. Have a good one.